All right, I'm doing my predictions for the season. I may be blasted for this, but here's what I have. I'm going to start in the West because for some reason I picked the West a lot better than I did the East. But then again, the NHL is hard to predict. So yeah. And last place in the Pacific Division, I have the Edmonton Oilers. Now, sure, they had a decent offseason. Don't get me wrong. Ken Holland is trying to turn that team around. Problem is, Edmonton has cap problems. The Oilers are McDavid. You can say Draisaitl, but realistically, the Edmonton Oilers are not a playoff team. Their ceiling is probably like last and like seventh in the division. Last, I have them in last because I just think this one team ahead, even that finished last, got better. But I have Edmonton in last because if you move Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins if you move Draisaitl off of McDavid's line, Draisaitl's a mediocre player. So yeah, Draisaitl fell off a cliff when he wasn't with McDavid. In seventh place, I have the LA Kings. I think LA got better. They had a good draft. Their prospect pool's good. Problem is they have so many players on the wrong side of 30. Like Quick is on the wrong side of 30. Who else is on? Oh yeah, Dustin Brown. Sure, he wants that C back. Though I think Dustin Brown should get the C back. Kopitar's on the wrong side of 30. Doughty's on the wrong side of 30. Yeah, the LA Kings are kind of screwed with age. They do have a good prospect pool, which I will give the LA Kings that. Six, I have Anaheim. Um, Anaheim really had a bad stretch all of last season, and it was kind of weird because I found myself cheering for Anaheim a lot this year because I was like, and they just break that losing streak because I feel bad for Anaheim fans. That's exactly what me with Anaheim. So yeah, Anaheim is probably going to finish sixth. They need to start rebuilding now. Just keep Gibson and Fowler because those are the guys that you're going to keep. And Raquel, but everyone else, I think you can move them. Moving on in fifth place. This will shock a lot of you, but I have the Calgary Flames in fifth place. I think the problem is this team's too inconsistent. Like a year after they make the playoffs, they tend to miss the playoffs. So I'm expecting them to miss the playoffs. They're one of the most inconsistent teams in the league. The Flames, honestly, that first round loss to Colorado, who did not have a 500 plus record, who did not have a 500 record, is gonna haunt the Flames, and they're gonna start to struggle. Especially since I think Johnny Gaudreau is gonna take a step back. Only player that I don't think takes a step back is Giordano. Their biggest problem is in net, though Cam Talbot could fix it, but I don't think Calgary is gonna have that good of a goaltending year as they did the past season. They had an all right goaltending year, but Mike Smith was the only one who tried in the playoffs. Moving on, fourth place, I have missing the playoffs, the San Jose Sharks. This team lost a lot. Sure, they bring back Erik Karlsson. They lost Joe Pavelski. They lost who else did they? Oh yeah, I know they lost some other pieces. I know they lost Ryan. They're keeping Karlsson, which is kind of stupid. But they did bring back LeBanc for 1 year and $1 million, which is a big time steal for the Sharks. But the problem is their blue line is not very good. Vlasic and Shimmick are the only ones who can actually play defense. Karlsson and Burns are offensively minded defensemen. In fact, Erik Karlsson's the most overrated defenseman in the league. In third place, I have the Vancouver Canucks. I want this team to miss the playoffs and miss the playoffs again in 2021 because we traded JT Miller over there and we got their first round pick. But they keep their first round pick if they miss the playoffs because it's lottery protected. And if they suck again and in 2021, then we can get, and they get the number one pick, then we can get their number one prospect. Problem is the system is in the lottery. So yeah, they should go by worst records because then it'd be kind of fair. But then again, you have Colorado getting Jack Hughes. Like seriously, if you went by worst records from this past season, because Ottawa had the worst record, but Colorado had that first round pick. So yeah, Vancouver third place. I hope they miss, but Vancouver's got a bright future. They've got Quinn Hughes on that blue line. You have Pedersen, who won the Calder. You have Besser, who should have won the Calder. You have Horvat, who should be their captain. You have have other guys on that team that can step up. I think Markstrom is a pretty decent goaltender that will bounce back this year. In second place, I have the Arizona Coyotes. They almost made the playoffs this year. And yet people were like, Arizona sucks. I'm like, no, they don't. If you think of it, Arizona had a pretty dang good team this year. Clayton Keller, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Darcy Kemper in net. You have a good blue line, too, with Yandel out there as well. The Coyotes have a pretty bright future. I think Nick Schmaltz is going to bounce back. I think the Coyotes are going to have a pretty dang good season and finish second in the division. And in first place, I have the Vegas Golden Knights. This division is so weak. The Vegas Golden Knights lost a lot because they had to get under the cap. So I have them winning the division because they realistically have the best roster out of everyone in this division. I think Vegas wins the division outright because I don't think there's anyone else to catch them. You can't say Arizona, San Jose, Vancouver, or Calgary, but realistically, Calgary is very inconsistent. San Jose lost a lot, and Arizona, I don't think, is ready to take over Vegas. Moving on to the Central Division. In seventh place, I have the Minnesota Wild. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Remember when the Minnesota Wild were a playoff contender? And remember when they were spurred in the league at one point during this past season? Because I do. The Minnesota Wild are now in hard times, and now they're starting a major rebuild. The Wild are going to have one of the longest rebuilds because Paul Fenton made some pretty stupid trades to try to get back into playoff contention, which I knew they weren't going to make the playoffs because we considered they had But they did finish last in the division. But of all the teams that did finish last, they were the best. But the thing is, the Wild are now going for a rebuild, and they're going to be very mediocre now. In sixth place, I have the Dallas Stars. This is going to shock a lot of people. Like, Dallas? Why? They gave St. Louis a good run for their money. Here's the thing. The injuries that Ben Bishop had are going to start to catch up to him, and he's going to start becoming mediocre. Bishop also is hit by injuries a lot. Despite he stayed in and played Game 6, he let in a weak goal by Vince Dunn, which was from the point without a screen, and Bishop just missed it. So yeah, and Dallas, the locker room, I think, is going to have a problem. They signed Corey Perry, which was kind of a stupid move. Sekera is not good. You have to rely on Heiskanen a lot to help out that defense. And he did make Roman Polak look decent this year. So yeah, in fifth place, I have this team in the playoffs, the Nashville Predators. They looked pretty vulnerable this past season. They did make a splash in the offseason by signing Duchesne. Problem is, Pekka Rinne's on the wrong side of 30, and he's only getting worse. The Nashville Predators are now going to be on a low this year. The Preds have The Preds are kind of one of the hardest teams to pick, even though everyone's like, they're the class of the Central. What do you mean? No, they're not. In fact, the Preds look pretty vulnerable this past season. Moving on, in fourth place, I have the Chicago Blackhawks. Just when everyone thought they were dead, they're back. The Chicago Blackhawks, I think, are going to make the playoffs this year because, realistically, they just got better. Kirby Dach, I don't think, is a special pick at 3, but they did make a decent move in signing a pretty dang good goaltender in Robin Lehner, who was a Vezina candidate, in my opinion, should have won the Vezina this past season. Moving on in third place, I have the Winnipeg Jets. People may be like, you're crazy if you think Winnipeg makes it over Dallas. Then again, Winnipeg actually has some decent scoring. Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Patrick Laine, if he can have a bounce back year, which I think Laine will have a bounce back year. And then you got guys like you got Bufflin and Morrissey on that blue line. That's a top 10 pairing in that division. Despite I don't like Bufflin or Morrissey, I still think they're a pretty good pairing. In second place, I have the St. Louis Blues, the defending Stanley Cup champions, bringing back almost everyone from that roster. Maroon is still a question mark on that team to see if he comes back, but I'm kind of concerned about that for the Blues to see if Maroon comes back. I would love to get Maroon for a cheap deal and then make a trade. Aid. So yeah, I'd love to get Maroon from St. Louis, honestly. And then in first place, I have the Colorado Avalanche. Bowen Byram added that blue line with Makar, Girard, and Johnson. Sure, Johnson is out with an injury, but Girard, Makar, and Byram, Leafly deep defense. Zadorov has proven to be a pretty solid defenseman this past season. They got what they needed, more depth. Nazem Kadri is a pretty solid depth player, despite he is a piece of trash. I will give it to you. He is a piece of trash, and I hate Nazem Kadri with a burning passion. But he's a pretty solid depth player that the Avs desperately needed. Sure, losing Kerfoot and Barry are going to hurt them, but they were going to move Barry anyway, and I knew they were going to find a way to move Kerfoot. And Barry, even if they didn't move him, he was going to leave after the season ended. So yeah, so Colorado in first in the division. Moving on to the Metro Division. In last place, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Columbus Blue Jackets are now on a low. You may call me biased because I don't like the Blue Jackets all that much, but realistically, almost everyone has them missing the playoffs, and I have them missing the playoffs and being one of the worst teams in the league. Losing your top 3 players is going to kill you. Losing Bobrovsky is going to kill your goaltending. Losing Panarin and Duchesne are going to kill your offense, especially Duchesne was amazing in that first round against Tampa, and I'm a Tampa fan. We all know how that first round went. Duchesne was a big reason why the Blue Jackets got out of that first round against Tampa. In 7th place, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins. How the mighty have fallen. This team is starting to go through bad times now as they got swept in the first round by the Islanders. They played awful. They were even worse than Tampa, because Tampa was at least giving you the only game Tampa really got blown out in was game 2. They played decently in games 1, 3, and 4. Despite Vasilevsky wasn't very good in that series, Matt Murray was just awful against the Islanders. The New York Islanders basically killed the Penguins. So the dynasty for the Penguins is over. I think they're going to take a step back and finish 7th in the division. In 6th place, I have the New York Islanders. I think they overachieved. You may have buried shots behind that bench, but then again, losing Robin Leonard is going to hurt you. And Varlamov being added. Varlamov is not a good goalie. He's not. Semyon Varlamov is probably one of the worst goaltenders that people don't even talk about. He's not a very good goalie. He was awful this season. He wasn't even starting in the playoffs because of Grubauer. And the New York Islanders honestly got worse. And Barzal Barzal proved his rookie season was a fluke. So yeah, I think the Islanders finished 6th. In 5th place, I have the New York Rangers. They had the fastest rebuild I've ever seen. I think the New York Rangers are going to get back into the playoffs. Lundqvist is going to be your starter again. Despite he's getting older, I think Lundqvist is a pretty solid starter. You had a Trouba, whom I don't think is very good, but then again, Trouba is pretty dang good offensively. Problem is, he makes some stupid mistakes defensively. At least it doesn't like Erik Karlsson, who's awful defensively. But at least Trouba, when he plays defense, he actually does well. He actually does okay, at least. But problem is, Trouba is decent offensively. Adding Panarin is going to really help, despite they overpaid the ever-living heck out of Panarin. But he was a top free agent, so I wasn't surprised he got overpaid. 4th place, I have the New Jersey Devils. I think this team got better adding Subban on that blue line. They got Gusev, who was probably the best player in the KHL this past season. They also brought in Jack Hughes, who was the best player of the draft. I think Kakko will be better than Jack Hughes. The Devils, I think Schneider has a better year, and I think Blackwood's going to be a pretty solid goaltender for the Devils. In 3rd place, I have the Philadelphia Flyers. I think Carter Hart's going to have a really good season this year. And the Flyers just have a very good season under Carter Hart and that team. Aim in Philly. The Flyers are one of the most improved teams this offseason beside the Yotes. But that Hayes contract was stupid. But I still think the Flyers they might trade Ghost, but I would at least go for a goaltender to back up Carter Hart because they do not have a backup. Sure, they brought back Elliott, but Elliott sucks. In 2nd place, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. This team was by far the most exciting team to watch this past season. Carolina was also one of the biggest underdog stories of the year. No one thought Carolina would get past the defending Stanley Cup champion Capitals, and no one thought they would get past the New York Islanders. So yeah, I think the Carolina Hurricanes are going to have a really good season, and I think the Hurricanes are going to get into the playoffs for the 2nd year in a row for the first time since they were in Hartford. Hartford, I believe. Yes, since they were in Hartford. And in first place, to no one's surprise, I have the Washington Capitals. This team is back for more. The Capitals just want to get another cup. They probably feel like this is their last chance, though. I feel like that same way too, as someone who supports the Caps. They don't have very many any decent prospects, and they need to make some trades to get some. They need to. Their defense, I think, is improved. Niskanen's gone. Ordpik's gone. They just need to get rid of Orlov, and then they're fine. I think this team is the best team in the NHL, and I think they're gonna go on another level this year. And the Capitals take over that division. And Braden Holtby has a pretty strong bounce back season, despite he had a mediocre start, but near the end of the season, he was actually pretty good. Good. So yeah, and I have the Capitals winning the President's Trophy, having the best record in the NHL. I think the Caps are the best team in the league. Moving on to the Atlantic Division. In last place, I have the Detroit Red Wings. I have this team being the worst team in the league. This team's rebuild is still going. They're at the beginning of a rebuild. This team is still at the beginning of a rebuild. Mort Seider was a questionable pick by Yzerman. Adding Philpol is not really going to help their Wings out. Their scoring was good. Problem is their goaltending is awful. Bernier and Howard is probably the worst goaltending pairing in the Atlantic Division. Howard and Bernier are by far terrible. Boom. May I remind you, the Red Wings are not a good goaltending team. And they're not going to be getting better. Yzerman will try his best, but I think this team is going to be the worst team in the league. And in 7th place, I have the Ottawa Senators. The Atlantic Division, we have the last two teams, Detroit and Ottawa, as a tank battle. And then we have teams that will underachieve, and then there's one who's really, really good. So yeah, Ottawa is definitely in a tank battle with Detroit, but I think Detroit's going to win it, and I think Ottawa is going to be very ahead of Detroit. But the thing is, Ottawa has decent goaltending. Craig Anderson's a somewhat decent goaltending. They did trade Mike Condon. I knew they were going to trade him, but they did trade him for Ryan Callan. Ryan Callan's not going to play because of the long-term injured reserve. So yeah, and I think I think Ottawa finishes 7th in the division. They'll be better, but they'll be bad, but not as bad as they were this past season. They'll still be awful, though. Not just worst team in the league. So yeah, Ottawa in 7th. In 6th place, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is going to shock a lot of people. Toronto is definitely going to be on hard times. They're mediocre. Marner's going to be gone. Tyson Barrie's not going to be very good for Toronto. Kerfoot and Barrie are bad fits for them. Matthews is one of the most overrated players in the league. Tavares is not very good. Anderson, they rely on Anderson too much. The Leafs don't have the Leafs have a lot of problems, so I will not be surprised if the Leafs miss the playoffs. In 5th place, this is going to get me a lot of hate. I have the Florida Panthers in 5th place. Let's be realistic here. The blue line of Florida is awful. They are not a good blue line at all. Florida is one of those teams that they're just not a good team anymore. But sure, adding Bobrovsky's going to help your goaltending, but you still have that defensive problem. Your offense is top 5 in the league. Don't get me wrong. You guys are top 5 offense. Your defense is the problem, though. You guys are near the bottom in defensive rankings. So, yeah, Florida is not a good team at all. They're going to underachieve so hard. They're going to be the biggest underachievers in NHL history. The Florida Panthers are going to be cup favorites this year, and they're going to miss the playoffs. That's what the thing is. Same thing with the Stars. And moving on, 4th place, I have my Tampa Bay Lightning. Honestly, we got worse. Girardi's gone. He was a big part of this blue line. Swept in the first round. It's going to haunt us. Losing a big guy with big heart, Ryan Callahan, to injury, and we traded his contract away, and it's going to hurt. We still have Alex Killorn. Shattenkirk is not a good defenseman. He'll make up for it offensively, but he has concerns with staying healthy. Hedman's an overrated blue liner. He's not as good as what people make him out to be. This team, this roster, it's not built to win. It's not built to win a cup. And we've seen that with Detroit. They went from 62 wins to like 38 wins. And they made the playoffs that year because the West was terrible that year. Despite they had the President's Trophy winners. But still, the West was awful that year. And they would have missed the playoffs if they were in the East. But we've seen teams with bad records do good things in the playoffs. So yeah, but I don't think I think Tampa's dominance is starting to end. In third place, I have the Buffalo Sabres. This team, I think, got better. Housley is gone on. He's an atrocious coach. They're bringing back Eichel and Skinner together. Dylan Cousins should be a good pick for Buffalo. They have some other good assets on that team. They might trade Ristolainen. I think they will. Or Zach Bogosian. Bogosian is basically useless. So, yeah, I think Buffalo in third. In second place, I have the Montreal Canadiens. Sure, they have a bad blue line, but as long as you have Carey Price, you're a playoff contender. That's the thing with the Habs. As long as Carey Price is on that team, they're a contender. They knew he made the playoffs. They would have made the playoffs if they were in the West. They would have bumped Colorado, but it's not consolation considering what Colorado did in the playoffs. And the Avalanche and the Habs obviously nearly made the playoffs. They barely missed the playoffs because Columbus. Because of Columbus, they missed the playoffs. They would have made it if they were in the West. And honestly, they would have been in the third round because Carey Price would have gotten by San Jose Sharks. So yeah, and first place in the Atlantic Division is the Boston Bruins. The Big Bad Bees, they're the class of the Atlantic Division. As a Tampa Bay fan, this team would have lost to the Bruins in the second round if we played them. Even without McAvoy, I think they'll get them back. They're still the better team in the Atlantic Division than Tampa Bay is. The Boston Bruins are the class of the Atlantic Division, coming from a Tampa Bay fan. The Bruins would have beaten Tampa in a best-of-7 series. In fact, they would have swept them. What happened to the Penguins by the Islanders is what the Bruins would have done to Tampa. If Tampa got out of that first round, they would have gotten annihilated by the Bruins. Like, it wouldn't have been close. The only reason it would have been close would be Vasilevsky, Callahan, and Point. They're the only ones who even played with heart in that first round. So, yeah. And especially the Tampa Bay Lightning in the playoffs, they're just awful. And, yeah. So, anyway, that's going to do it. I will do awards predictions tomorrow. So, yeah. That's my predictions. They are bound to change, though. So, I will end this right here. So, bye.